On the Road with the Western Ag Network.
Hi, everybody from the Western Ag Network. It's time for On the Road. I'm Russell Nemetz, and today finds us in Billings, Montana, where the 104th Annual Montana Farm Bureau Federation Annual Convention and Trade Show is underway. It's our pleasure to have Cyndi Johnson, Montana Farm Bureau President, join us to kind of kick off this On the Road feature. And Cyndi, we could spend all day talking about convention, but more importantly, just talk about the important function this annual convention still holds true to Farm Bureau members across the state.
Well, this is our one time a year that we all get together and we obviously rekindle all of those old friendships and see people we haven't seen for a year. But we also do the important work of Montana farmers and ranchers by entertaining all of those policies that began at the grassroots level. No policy enters our policy book unless it occurs at the local level first, where the members undertake debate in their local communities. They surface the issues that are really critical to them, and then they vote on them as a group and send them to the state, propose them at that level. And so this week, that's what we'll be doing, is having our delegate session, listen to those policies, debate those policies, lobby those policies, if you will, and then ultimately decide whether or not they belong in our policy book.
Well, one of those big policy issues that farmers and ranchers are kicking around, not just here at this convention, but have been for several months now and continue to talk about, is a new farm bill. And we've kind of run into a little bit of a roadblock, haven't we, in Washington, D.C.?
Well, Congress is struggling to do what it needs to be doing instead of what it wants to do. And its focus isn't on getting the real work of people done, unfortunately. All we can do is just keep applying pressure. And we have a great team in Washington, D.C. working on behalf of all of our members. That's the cool thing about membership. Not only are you a member locally of Farm Bureau, but you're a member of the state organization and you're a member of the national organization. And we have a great team in D.C. that work on our behalf, they've been working on that farm bill since, I think they sent in our policy priorities about 18 months ago. So they have been just working nonstop, trying to get those policies, at least leave the good stuff on the table. You know, we understand that there's a real issue trying to find the money to pay for some of these things, but it needs to be a bipartisan effort, and that takes time. And we just have to be patient. You know, Joby, our executive vice president for the AFBF, did tell us this morning that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe by January we will have a farm bill. You know, all we can do is hope.
You know, we talk a lot about the importance of a farm bill, but truly, like, one of the biggest parts of that farm bill, especially for the farming community, is that crop insurance title.
Yeah, risk management is our priority, and it needs to stay at least at the level that it's been at. You know, we would love to have some new reference prices. We are hoping that's not pie in the sky, but it only makes sense. The cost of everything has gone up, you know, and you can't keep trying to run your farm and ranch on the value of your expenses in 2012. It just doesn't make any sense. So hopefully risk management will stay a priority for everyone that's involved with that conversation.
You know, another big priority issue, especially here in Montana with farmers and ranchers, is always water.
Water. The waters of the U.S., obviously the Supreme Court handed us a win last summer. EPA obviously did the tweaking they felt was necessary to comply with the Supreme Court's adjudication. We're still very disappointed in that. It's still not what we need to protect Montana farmers and ranchers from regulatory oversight that would inhibit their ability to farm and ranch.
You know, you and a bunch of other Montana Farm Bureau members and farmers and ranchers and others from across Big Sky country are just back home from a trade mission that you were part of that was hosted by Montana Governor Greg Gianforte to Taiwan. Talk about that trade mission and why that little Pacific Rim nation is so important to Montana agriculture.
Well, I think that Taiwan is like our number 3 or 4 trading partner for Montana agriculture products. While we were there, we got to witness the Director of Trade and Marketing signed an agreement to purchase another 69.8 million bushels of American wheat. Obviously, wheat is a big deal over in Taiwan. They love our wheat. Wheat has actually taken the place of rice as the primary staple for their diet. And not everyone likes the expansion of their waistband, but they sure do love our wheat. And we are so happy to be engaged with them for that reason. They also love Montana beef. And you might have an opportunity to visit with a couple of other folks that were with us on that trade mission, J.M. Peck, Jim Willis, and they were our beef guys, Turk Soval. They were there talking about beef and had an amazing experience in that realm. And it's just, the people are so gracious and so hospitable, and they love Americans. And how cool is that? I mean, not a lot of people say they love Americans anymore, and that was just an amazing experience.
Yeah, it really is incredible. And even beyond Taiwan, Cyndi, trade as a whole is very important to farmers and ranchers, right?
Oh, it is. It is. The Pacific Rim is the primary target for Montana grains. I'm not sure what the primary target for Montana beef is because I'm not a beef producer, but I know that there are a whole lot of wheat goes across the Pacific Ocean to those countries also. And so it is critical. Trade is critical. Trade agreements are critical. We're hoping that things will begin to improve finally in that realm.
Hey, before I let you go, I know we're doing this interview at your annual convention here in Billings, but I saw on one of the screens upstairs, it's not too early to start thinking about next summer's mid-year conference, which is headed for Eastern Montana, isn't
Indeed.
it?
Yes, Miles City, close to my old stomping grounds. I'm a Broadus girl, so I'm excited to go back to the eastern part of the state. Eastern Montana is one of Montana's better kept secrets. And I'm hoping that people don't discover that, but we really want everybody who's a member of Farm Bureau and everyone that has an interest in farming and ranching to come to Miles City next summer in June and join us with our summer committee meetings.
Hey, sounds like a plan. Get those dates on the calendar now, and of course you can find more information about everything that we've been talking about today and what's coming up by visiting the Montana Farm Bureau Federation's website, which is mfbf.org. Again, our thanks to Cyndi Johnson, the Montana Farm Bureau Federation's president, for joining us here on the Road. Well, as we continue our coverage from the Montana Farm Bureau Federation's 104th Annual Convention and Trade Show here in Billings, it's fun to catch up with a dear friend, Beth Blevins from Western Montana. And Beth, we've attended a lot of these Montana Farm Bureau conferences and conventions over the years, but kind of an exciting one this year because you were part of the 2023 ACE graduate class this year. Talk about ACE and how important it is, what it is, and why you're so excited.
Yep. So ACE stands for Advocate, Communicate, and Educate. And it's a program that teaches you to be a better communicator, also how to relate with other people that are not from your agriculture background. So it broadens your view of what agriculture is. It broadens your view of how to be inclusive of other people. We're less than 2% of the population now, so we need to cultivate that communication between areas that are not in the agriculture sector for their support at the voting booth, for their support of what we do to make a living and what we do to feed the world.
So what was it like to be part of the class? I mean, just give us a nugget or two of what this past year or has been like for you and the other class members.
Yeah. So the class members are amazing. That relationship that we developed among the other students is invaluable. There's so much talent there. It was very humbling to be a part of that class and to see what caliber and see the great things that these classmates are starting to do. We develop relationships because we meet in person 6 times a year, and then we meet in the book club every other month that we're not seeing each other in person. So you really do develop a sense of what they are and what they stand for and start to integrate what you believe into what they are and picking up pieces from them, as well as the excellent speakers that all the staff that organize it line up for us. And a big shout out to Liv Holt. She's no longer in Montana, but she was a big part of the ACE class until she moved back to South Dakota. And then Sue Ann Stryford and
Yep.
Carly Johnson kind of picked up where Liv had to leave off. So just an incredibly talented group of people, and the speakers, the caliber of speakers, you just can't believe it unless you participated in it yourself. And the deadline for applications is December 1st. So make sure if you have any interest in it at all that you get an application in. I would encourage it.
Absolutely. I mean, whether it's you or some of your other classmates from this year's graduating class or from other years, I mean, everybody just has nothing but good things to say about ACE and how it really makes you a better spokesperson for your very industry. As I talked about a little bit earlier, though, Beth, you and your husband and your family have been coming to Montana Farm Bureau meetings for as long as I can remember, and you obviously were very involved at the county level first and the local level. Why is Farm Bureau so important to your family's operation? And by the way, you're still a large animal veterinarian there in Western Montana.
Yes, I am. Old vets never retire. We joined 25 years ago when we bought our own place. So we'd been with the family ranch. We raise registered Angus cattle. So I'm the hired hand on the ranch and the veterinarian on the road because Craig is my tech. We joined, we did not realize it was an organization, but the piece of ground and the home that we bought were insured under Farm Bureau. And Bill Meadows, who was the Northwest County's Farm Bureau president at that time, told us about the meeting annual meeting, and we didn't know that there was an organization attached to the insurance that we had purchased. So we came to that first annual meeting. Jake Cummins gave a rousing speech, and we
As he
committed
was known to be able to do.
Yes, and we just stayed involved, and it grew from there. And Bill Meadows, his eyesight doesn't let him come to the meetings as much anymore, but I really appreciate the influence that he's had over the years.
Yeah, well, what an incredible story and an incredible journey. Just another great example from Beth Blevins and her family there in Western Montana about what it means and what it can mean and all the opportunities that can exist if you allow yourself to just become part of something like Farm Bureau. And as Beth mentioned, if you're interested in becoming a member of the next ACE class, that deadline is fast approaching. It's December 1st, and you can either give the Montana Farm Bureau office a call there in Bozeman to learn more, get signed up, or you can jump online at mfbf.org. Well, joining us now from the Montana Farm Bureau Federation's Women's Leadership Committee is MFBF's chair of this Women's Committee, Carla Lawrence. And Carla, it's fun to catch up with you here at this year's annual convention in Billings. And gosh, as always, there's a ton of stuff going on with the Women's Leadership Committee. But first, let's talk about some of the things that happened at this year's convention. A lot of excitement here.
Yes, we just got finished with our the program luncheon, which I emceed, and during that time we had a women's leadership auction, and we brought in a basket of items that were, it was an amazing response. And so we had actually a goat or a gate closer from Dick Roma in Lavina. We had a handmade bread knife, artisan's breads that were beautiful, made by Joy DePute and Beth Blevins, and handmade jellies, jams, honeys, wines, and we auctioned it off, and it was very successful. The first round went for $725, and then the gal donated it back, and then we auctioned it again, and it sold for $525. So we raised $1,250 for the women's leadership programs and scholarships.
Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into the rest of the year, because this is just, you know, a few days out of the entire year, but you guys have a lot of other fun activities and important programs that you're spreading Farm Bureau's message to ladies and others across Big Sky Country.
Right. So another thing that we do is on the American Farm Bureau level, the Women's Leadership Committee supports the Ronald McDonald Houses across the nation. And in Montana, we have 2 Ronald McDonald Houses, one in Billings, one in Missoula. And so today we also presented to Dana Donovan at the Ronald McDonald House here in Billings, a check for some cash, and also we had a great response from across the state, and we donated. The Ronald McDonald Houses have a wish list, and we donated items on that wish list to both of the houses. And so that was really exciting, and that's something that's ongoing. Every year we try to work with both the Ronald McDonald Houses in the state.
How important is it, Carla, for women to either get more actively involved or maybe just step out of their comfort zone a little bit and get involved, even if it's at the local level, then work your way up to the state level like you have, and then eventually start dipping your toes into some of the national programs?
Right. So the Women's Leadership Committee Chair does sit on the board of directors for Montana Farm Bureau, and not all, but many of the county farm bureaus have a women's leadership committee within their county, and so it kind of starts there, and then our committee at the state level is made up of 2 local gals within the 10 districts, so we have 20 gals on our committee, and it's full, and there's people come and go a little bit, but we have gals that have been there for a really long time. And so it's, we encourage them to, we do training so they can learn to communicate better and to advocate for agriculture, definitely. We encourage them to go to Calling on the Capitol, which is every other year when the legislative session's going on, and they have opportunities during the year to attend, either do a fly-in, which will be coming up in 2024, into DC, where you're trained up and you're with all women from all over the United States with the American Farm Bureau gals, and then usually have a chance to visit the Hill and see our senators and representatives. Yeah. And so that's a really fun deal. And a lot of times too, we encourage them to attend the American Farm Bureau, which will be in Salt Lake City this year in January, and that we have 2 votes on the floor during the American Farm Bureau Women's Annual Meeting. So that's an important role, and we just we get together and we talk about things, and we had a training session. We had our first training session, which was really great, ahead of Calling on the Capitol this past year, and we were able to address topics that the gals wanted to hear, or things they wanted to learn about.
Yeah. Anything else before I let you out of the hot seat and the bright lights that you guys are working on coming up in 2024 that you want to get the word out?
Well, right now in 2024, we will be working with the Ronald McDonald Houses. We will, like I said, be attending a couple of those events.
Yep.
And there's also a boot camp that's available, so we'll be encouraging a couple gals to maybe go to boot camp in DC.
That sounds great. And as always, we appreciate Carla Lawrence joining us here, talking a little bit about what's been going on at the Montana Farm Bureau Federation's Women's Leadership Committee. She's their chair from Boyd. And of course, you can always jump online at Montana Farm Bureau website at mfbf.org for more details. Well, as we begin to wind down this On the Road feature from the 104th Annual Montana Farm Bureau Convention and Trade Show here in Billings, it's fun to catch up with the Executive Vice President of the American Farm Bureau Federation, Joby Young. And Joby, you were telling this audience here in Billings a little bit about your family's history, your ties to agriculture in Georgia. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to before taking on this great position at Farm Bureau.
Yeah, sure. I'm a little new to Farm Bureau, being with AFBF for about 15 months, but not new to the Farm Bureau family. I grew up a Georgia Farm Bureau member. We had a horse farm, grew up in the quarter horse racing industry, and obviously worked with Farm Bureau for years in ag policy. I've been in D.C. over a decade, and working in Congress, working in USDA, and Farm Bureau and all the ag stakeholders out there, folks in the commodity organizations, somebody I've worked with for a long time. So it's a great group. It's a great constituency to represent, great communities to go and have conversations with the non-ag public or with policymakers at all levels about the issues that affect not only farm and ranch families but affect everybody. Because if you eat or you put clothes on your back, then you care about food and ag issues.
You know, before we start talking about some of that important ag policy, Joby, just carry on that theme just for me for a little bit about just how important it is for farmers and ranchers on the ground still involved with production agriculture to hone in that important message and tell some of their urban counterparts.
Yeah, sure. Well, farmers and ranchers make up about 2% of the American population. If you expand that out to others that are ag professionals and involved in the food supply chain, you might get up to about 4%. So it's real important when we're talking to that other 96% of the population to be proactive about it, to be skilled at it, to be real thoughtful about it. Because the truth is, a lot of folks out there don't know much about ag. It's just because they live a different life, you know. And so it's important for us to go talk to them about anything that comes up on the table in terms of ag policy, about how that really plays out on the ground, you know, economically, in terms of the effect of the food supply chain, the effect to rural communities, and all the rest. Because as I mentioned, it's going to affect everybody, and it's on us to share our story and do a good job at that.
You know, much like these state conventions where the county Farm Bureau members come, the delegates, and they set the policy for the coming year. You know, there's a lot of important policy being talked about, obviously, at the national level. First and foremost is the Farm Bill. What's the latest on the Farm Bill, given all the chaos or dysfunction, however you want to describe Washington, D.C. these days? Bottom line, farmers and ranchers need a Farm Bill, and they need it sooner than later.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The 2018 Farm Bill expired September 30th. The unfortunate thing is that happened alongside a lot of unique times, to say the least, in Congress with speaker elections and government funding issues. Right now, as we sit here on the 9th, the government funding expires on November 17th, just a few days away. So, you know, whether it's those leadership races or government funding issues, those are the same things that have been happening at the same time that we've been really trying to push to get the Farm Bill conversation advanced. So we're really fortunate. We have 4 great folks that are those leaders of the agriculture committees in the House and the Senate, and they've been focused on that. Their staffs and the other members of the agriculture committees have been writing a Farm Bill and working on those things. They just had to work on getting it to the House floor and the Senate floor and conferencing and getting it across the finish line. So, as I mentioned, expired on September 30th. There's, you know, certain things that start happening on September 30th in terms of problems with the authorizations of different programs. That advances January 1st. So we're pushing for that 5-year bill because we need to have those updates to programs. A lot's happened since 2018, you know, out here in farm country and in the economy, inflation and supply prices and all sorts of economic things. And so we need that Farm Bill, that 5-year bill, and we're okay, you know, having that conversation about whatever extension gets us through that. But we've hoped, and we're still pushing for that to happen this year. If it doesn't, we want it the first quarter next year and really get that done. And we're really thankful for those members of Congress that are working on that with us.
And of course, a big component of that Farm Bill, whether it's here in Montana or somewhere in the Midwest or even on the East Coast, Joby, is making sure that we keep that important crop insurance provision in there for our farmers. But for livestock producers, I know the American Farm Bureau Federation is also paying very close attention to the Bureau of Land Management and that new conservation rule that impacts farmers and ranchers, especially out here in the West.
Yeah, in the West, you have a lot of unique issues. So when you're grazing on public lands or when you're raising livestock, there are a lot of unique issues there. That's certainly one of them because there's so many ranchers out here that utilize those grazing permits, and we want to make sure that beneficial use is protected. And so there's a lot of questions about this conservation rule that BLM put out, or there wasn't a lot of opportunity for input or dialogue around that, and that's something we were disappointed in. And so we'll continue to share the concerns about that, and hopefully have some a good movement to make sure that those grazing opportunities, other things aren't endangered when it comes to those sorts of things.
You know, in the Wizard of Oz, Joby, it was, you know, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. But out here in the West, it's more like mountain lions, grizzly bears, and wolves, oh my. Talk about the effort that Farm Bureau is also undertaking to try to get some sort of meaningful reform to the Endangered Species Act.
Yeah, so that's an ongoing conversation, and whether it's in the Endangered Species Act and the treatment of large predator species, or whether it comes to Endangered Species Act issues that come into play with crop protection use and other things. That's an ongoing conversation, and it's one that we're going to continue to have to seek to reform of that, or just to make sure that those agencies are having rulemaking that keeps in mind the practical uses and safe uses, whether it's of land, when it comes to pesticides or whatever, or just responsible management that takes into account what some of these bigger species, what effects they have on producers across these areas where they have to deal with them. If you're in the Midwest or the South or the East Coast, that's something that folks don't deal with as much, but it's an important issue out here for sure, and one that we'll continue to focus on.
Hey, just kind of wrapping things up here, Joby, we could literally talk here all day about ag policy and different issues you folks at Farm Bureau are working on, but everything we've talked about today and more will be discussed, probably cussed just a little bit at the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual convention headed for Utah in January.
That's right. We'll be there January 19th to 24th, and as most folks know, they're involved in Farm Bureau otherwise. The big piece of that is not just getting together and folks reconnecting and being able to share stories and best practices and learn a lot about policy issues and other things, but also making that policy. And that's something that starts at 2,800 county farm bureaus. Folks, it might be a conversation around a pickup truck bed, and it goes to the county farm bureau at a state meeting like this and ends up at the national meeting. And that's really a great thing about Farm Bureau, I think, and about the farm and ranch families that are our members, is that they're involved. This is important to them. They share their expertise, they share their experiences, and it culminates in that policy-making process in that meeting there in January, when we really look forward to folks from across the country joining us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate
Yep.
you joining us here on the Western Ag Network's On the Road feature, this time coming to everyone from Billings, Montana at the Montana Farm Bureau Federation's 104th Annual Convention. And as Joby was mentioning, the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual convention is in fact headed for Salt Lake City, Utah in January. Make plans now if you haven't already done so to join us, and you can get all the details online by visiting fb.org. For the Western Ag Network, I'm Russell Nemetz.
On the road with the Western Ag Network.